Tonight, federal government and organized labor in an emergency meeting to resolve their disagreement on the new national minimum wage. Industrial action by the labor unions grounds activities at government offices, airports, power installations and schools, among others, around the country. Renowned economists Bismarck Rewane and Luda Yusuf weigh in on government and labor face-off, recommend possible middle ground between both parties as national minimum wage. And energy giant Geregu Power PLC signs deal with German tech conglomerate Siemens Energy on capacity expansion at the Geregu 1 power plant.
On business news tonight, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association warns that the over 400,000 naira minimum wage proposed by Labour could cripple businesses in the country.
On sports news tonight, Real Madrid have confirmed the signing of France captain Kylian Mbappe on a free transfer from Paris Saint-Germain, with the striker penning a 5-year contract.
And from the nation's capital, Vice President Kashim Shettima restates the commitment of President Bola Tinubu's administration to improving the quality of life of all Nigerians.
Appears to be a make-or-mar dialogue. Representatives of the federal government and labor unions are currently locked in negotiation in a bid to end industrial action embarked upon today by the organized labor over a new national minimum wage. Well, that meeting is coming after labor made good its threats to shut down activities beginning today, with no fewer than 15 unions that are affiliates of the Nigeria Labour Congress, the NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, the TUC, directing their members to fully comply with the directive to down tools. While our correspondent Dele Omoyeni is at the venue of that meeting, which is holding at the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Hello, Dele. Please, what more do you know about this ongoing talks?
Yeah, good evening and welcome everyone. Just behind me is the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, where the labor leaders are meeting with the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. We also hear that the National Security Advisor is in this meeting, Malam Nuhu Ribadu. Right now, as we speak, we don't have any information as to what's going on because it's a closed-door meeting. However, of course, in my reports that you see much later in this news at 10, we interacted with some leaders of the labor movement earlier today. Of course, I had an exclusive interview with Mr. Festus Osifo, the President of the Trade Union Congress. And of course, we held meetings with other labor leaders, asking them several questions. Of course, I did press some of the labor leaders that were hearing some figures around town. That these figures true? For instance, we heard that if labor says that if government can give them a minimum wage of at least 100,000, they perhaps may come back to negotiate with government based on that. But we don't have any proof as to that, because they answered that question quite diplomatically, saying, well, they're not sure. They didn't say yes, and they didn't say no. But for right now, as we speak, this meeting started at about 5 o'clock, and as we speak, it's past 10. They're still there at the office of the SGFN.
Thank you very much, Dele Omoyeni. We'll definitely keep our eyes on that story and get more information as it develops. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, at the venue of the meeting between the labor unions and the federal government. But before the negotiation resumed this evening, workers in the nation's capital, Abuja, and of course other parts of the country stayed away from work in compliance with the directive by labor. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, reports earlier that government offices in Abuja were also under lock and key.
Let the masses breathe was the first thing workers demanded as they cited Channels Television's crew at the Federal Secretariat in Abuja. The Federal Secretariat is not the only place under lock and key. The Federal High Court, as well as other government offices in the city center, are also deserted, with schools not left out, which is a delight for the unions who applaud the compliance by Nigerian workers.
It's a popular industrial action, so we don't even need to be confident on anything, because we strongly believe that this is one issue that touches the fabric of workers in Nigeria. So invariably, from our monitoring since 6 a.m. this morning, the compliance level has been very high.
There's no any action, any reaction from the government after the last meeting. So we need, what we want is 475. So now they are giving us 60,000. Explain to us how if a family will spend that 60,000 you are giving to us. They cannot explain. That's why we're on ground. And the strike will continue until they answer us. And the electric tariff have to come down because it's from 60 to 200 and something, which is at the, on the high side. The people are suffering.
The Labour leadership also have a message for the government.
We expected that government should have apprehended this all the while. Like we always said, we don't enjoy strike. Strike is a means to an end. So if immediately today we have commitment from government, if tomorrow we have commitment, if it's 2 weeks we have commitment from them, then we would pull back.
Some Nigerians expressed their feelings on the industrial action.
Labour are trying. This is what we want in Nigeria. Let's see that change. Let the masses breathe. We are suffering a lot. A bag of rice is over 100,000. So what are you earning? Your transport and whatever. Nothing. Labour have to. So we are like what Labour are doing.
We actually resumed 5 weeks earlier before people resumed, other schools resumed. So we are lagging behind now academic, which make us unprepared for our exams.
We are fully in support of whatever it is that the NLC and TUC stands for. So once the NLC and the TUC gives us directive that they have complied with whatever it is that the federal government, then once they call off the strike, then we also will comply to that.
The Labour centers say only government can decide the duration of the strike action, depending on its response. Daily Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
States in other parts of the northern region are also not left out in the industrial action declared by the 2 labor centers in Nigeria. Our correspondents report that schools and public offices remain closed. Members of the Trade Union Congress and the Nigeria Labour Congress working to ensure total compliance with the industrial action declared by the leadership of the leading labour centres in the country. State secretariats are locked, business activities are disrupted, and government facilities like hospitals and schools are shut down in compliance with the directive.
We are pressing for many things, but 2 are prominent. One, the issue of minimum wage, which has been lingering over since April. No resolution has been reached. The second one is the hike in the tariff of electricity. We want them to revert back to the former 165 naira per kilowatts.
We pray to Almighty Allah for a quick intervention to touch the minds of the people in control or in charge of the hem of the affairs so that we will find a long-lasting solution to the lingering issue as far as the new minimum wage is concerned in the country.
It is the right time now that Nigerian workers are saying no to all these obnoxious policies of inhumans they are doing to us. How much of the vehicle they are riding? And we are the engine rooms of all what we are demanding for.
The industrial action is taking place when some students are participating in the West Africa Examination Council exercise. However, some states report that the strike did not affect the exercise.
The work has settled that we should conduct the examination for those who are writing their SSC. The strike does not affect us.
I wouldn't feel better because it's not good for a student to stay at home while he's supposed to be in school studying.
Nevertheless, private businesses like banks that attempted to open business were shut down in some locations.
The SEC and the SAC of the 2 labor unions in Zamfara State are going around to ensure compliance. As we are talking to you right now, we have visited about 4 or 5 banks in Gusau Metropolis here.
We are fighting for the benefit of Nigerians. So I'm begging them they should understand we are not here to harass anybody, to stop anybody to withdraw his money. We are here to plead with them to help us fight the common goal.
The workers are lamenting the high cost of living in the country and failure of the government to implement a new minimum wage.
We are here to oppose the strike action in Katana as being done in some other states. And as we are all aware, the purpose of the strike is the inability of the federal government or the tripartite committee to meet up with the demand of the Nigerian Labour Congress.
For now, the workers are not backing down on their demand for a reviewed minimum wage that reflects the economic situation in the country.
Well, here in the South, civil servants have also joined their counterparts in other parts of the country to down tools. A visit to government offices in Lagos and other southern states showed offices under lock and key, with officials of the labor union seen enforcing the industrial action.
As organized labor strike takes full effect, the impact in the southwest begins in Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. In Alausa, the seat of power where most state government offices are located, workers are locked out and business activities grounded. The roads are less busy for a Monday morning in Nigeria's commercial nerve center. The chairman, Nigeria Labour Congress, Lagos State Chapter, Fumisesi, says the union is out to ensure compliance to the directive issued by the executives.
As you can see, we've locked the gates for people, staff that are under level 14. The 14 and above are in there working. But we know that if you allow everybody in, there won't be any effect. So anybody below level 14 should go home. That's what we have done.
In neighboring Ogun State, the Federal Secretariat at Abeokuta in the capital is under lock and key as workers stayed away from their offices in compliance with directives of the national leaderships of both the NLC and TUC. Labour also made good its promise in Oyo State as many public school students in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, were turned back by their teachers in the early hours of the day. Banks and other financial institutions were seen running skeletal services as their gates remained closed to usual businesses. The government secretariat at Agodi also showed a very low turnout of workers as most of those present are senior civil servants. Still in the southwest, Ondo State is not left out as organized labor officials gather at the NLC secretariat for a brief meeting. The chairman of NLC and TUC in the state, in a chat with Channels Television, expressed confidence in the level of compliance in the state.
Have you ever seen in our House of Rep or House of Senate when they just raise up and sponsor a bill on behalf of workers? They will not. And they know we are the engine room for the money they were spending. But they will never sponsor any bill on our behalf.
The labor union leaders later embarked on a monitoring and enforcement exercise to ensure compliance. From the southwest to Ebonyi State in the southeast, in Abakaliki, the state capital. Economic activities are at a halt as banks are under lock and key. Some residents asked Nigerians to exercise patience with organized labor, noting this is a worthy sacrifice, while calling on the federal government to come to terms with organized labor and resolve the issues surrounding the proposed minimum wage. NLC officials also locked down in Owerri, the Imo State capital. Edo State, South Nigeria is the next stop, as members of the NLC and TUC locked up the state secretariat, shutting out civil servants from the complex in compliance with the union's directive. The unions say even though the state government recently increased the state's minimum wage to 70,000 naira, they had to comply with the national body's directive, maintaining that the strike is not targeted at the state.
Well, the strike is not against the government, it's a national directive, and we are duty bound to comply.
Calabar, the Cross River State capital, is not left out. Fuel stations, schools and banks across the metropolis are shut in compliance with the exercise. The impact of the strike is also felt in River State as organized labor is taking extra steps to ensure compliance. At the Niger Delta Development Commission's headquarters, Labour met some staff on ground and ordered all non-essential staff to evacuate the premises. Arriving the SPDC industrial area, they opposed strongly the partial compliance, insisting that the labour strike includes the management. An official of Pengerson reiterated Labour's stance.
Let's meet today. No, we need to talk to somebody. The awareness must be there. No, you enter and follow them. We need to talk to somebody. Take him to whoever that is in charge. We need to talk to somebody.
As the strike holds activities across the country, many Nigerians expect that organized labour and the federal government will once again find the common ground at the negotiation table to resolve the minimum wage impasse once and for all.
In part two, after the break, we have more on the industrial action by the organized labor, plus renowned economists Bismarck Rewani and Muda Yusuf weigh in on government and labor face-off, recommend possible middle ground between both parties as national minimum wage. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television from Lagos. A reminder of our main stories. Federal government and organized labor in an emergency meeting to resolve their disagreement on the new national minimum wage. Industrial action by the labor unions grounds activities of government office, airports, power installations and schools, among others, around the country. Renowned economists Bismarck Rewani and Muda Yusuf weigh in on government and labor face-off, recommend possible middle ground between both parties as national minimum wage. And energy giant Geregu Power PLC signs deal with German tech conglomerate Siemens Energy at capacity expansion at the Geregu 1 power plant. With the labour strike, which is taking a toll on the aviation sector, as most local terminals were closed to passengers today. In Lagos and Abuja, passengers could not gain access into the departure halls at the airport gates, and doors were taken over by union officials. The action also affected flight operations in Rivers and Kaduna states.
This is the gate of the Murtala Muhammed Airport 2 in Lagos, southwest Nigeria, as the aviation unions lock out both passengers and staff. Quite a number of passengers are stranded with luggages in hand, and they express disappointment at this development.
We are all here, disappointed, and we don't know what to do. Whether the NLC will call off their strike today or it will still continue, we don't know. We are begging the federal government to help us see to this situation in Nigeria.
I'm in support of them. And I wish that this government will look at what they are doing. Not that they are going to increase it to 460. The economy cannot sustain it, but at least to something reasonable so that their take-home can take them to their house, even if it's not enough to feed them.
The General Aviation Terminal is not left out as the unions enforce the action here. At the Abuja airport in the nation's capital, a few passengers are seen at one of the entrances into the terminal as doors are locked. Within the airport terminal is empty, no staff are in sight, and airline stands are empty. In Rivers State, South Nigeria, the strike is in full swing at the Port Harcourt Airport. The National Union of Air Transport Employees block access into the airport for vehicles. Passengers are then forced to come down and walk into the airport.
We have blocked the toll gate.
Chairman of the Rivers State chapter of Association of Nigerian Aviation Professionals, Emmanuel Akaha, explains why passengers are still being allowed to come into the airport.
There is no check-in going on. There is no aircraft movement. Even if aircraft touches ground, there will be no staircase to alight from.
And finally, in northern Nigeria, Kaduna State to be precise, the airport here is also empty of passengers as the strike takes its toll on airline operations, passengers, and aircraft movements.
And staying with the labour action, Nigerians are also feeling the impact of the strike in the area of power supply, as the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, has announced the complete shutdown of the country's power grid by the unions. Making this known in a statement, TCN spokesperson Ndidimba explains that the action was carried out by the TCN workers at about 2 a.m. today, resulting in a nationwide blackout. Now, the nationwide industrial action did not affect the Supreme Court as it sat to hear matters from senior lawyers and litigants amid a heavy presence of police officers outside the court in Abuja. Members of the Judiciary Staff Union were said to have showed up at the court, but this did not stop the court from sitting. However, right here in Lagos, the strike paralyzed activities in the courts. Our correspondent Shalashi Ale, who visited some of the courts across the state, found that most workers stayed away in obedience to the June 1 circular issued by the Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria, JUSN, mobilizing its members for the strike. At the Court of Appeal, Lagos Division in Judiciary, Lagos Island, it was gathered that the court initially sat in the early hours of today, but had to stop when JUSN officials came for an enforcement and a few lawyers could be seen milling around. At the Federal High Court in Ikoyi, lawyers and litigants were turned back from entering the court, shortly after which the gates were firmly shut and padlocked. Some of the staff who showed up for work declined to talk on camera, but said off camera that they would have to return home. And some judges also showed up for work, but they were prevented from sitting. It was the same scenario at the Lagos High Court in Ikeja. Even the Tafawa Balewa Square Division, with just an executive ensuring compliance with the strike. However, a few lawyers and litigants could be seen loitering around the courts, with many of them hoping there might be a reversal to the strike action. Meanwhile, the federal government has reiterated its appeal to the labor unions to discontinue the ongoing industrial action and return to the negotiating table. Well, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Idris, made this appeal, stressing the need for a realistic balance, warning that the proposed 494,000 naira by the labor centers can lead to job losses and economic hardship. He was speaking at a press briefing earlier today in Abuja in company of the Minister of State for Labor and Employment, Mrs. Nkiruka Onyejocha.
Government will continue. This is a heartfelt and deeply considered appeal to the labor unions to continue along the path of negotiations with the federal, state governments, and the organized private sector under the auspices of the tripartite committee that has been established by government to fashion out a new, realistic minimum wage for the people of Nigeria. Let me make it clear that we are not opponents on this negotiating table. We are united by the fact that we want the best for the Federal Republic of Nigeria and all the over 200 million citizens of this country. We have a responsibility to strike a measured and realistic balance in this effort to arrive at a new minimum wage for Nigeria. The minimum wage is not only for the public sector workers. It will be binding on the private sector as well. This reality must be factored into all negotiations we enter into. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is firmly committed in doing what is right, reasonable, and sustainable regarding these minimum wage negotiations. We therefore make this passionate appeal once again to the labor unions to reciprocate this gesture in the interest of this nation. The AGF has given what the federal government position is, but at this point, what is important for all of us as Nigerians is to come together. We believe that this labor movement also means well for Nigerians. After all, the negotiation they are doing, according to them, is also on behalf of Nigerians.
Finding a balance between government's position on capacity to pay the workers' consideration of economic realities may bring the much-desired solution to the ongoing impasse between both parties. Well, the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company believes that 90,000 naira may be a fair value, also considering the perspective of the government and Labour.
When we did our math and my projections the other day, I said if sum of 90,000 naira could be fair value, as long as the federal government in its programs, in the what they call the stimulus package and fiscal incentives, is able to incentivize the private sector and small businesses to be able to meet this minimum wage. Without that, those businesses are going to have to retrench people. So after considering all of that, I thought that 90,000 naira could be a landing point because the consequence of a disruption in the business of the country, both at the public and private sector levels, could be quite. It could be a very expensive exercise. So I think right now, if going from 60,000 naira to 90,000 naira would be good. But if you take 90,000 naira, it is 200% of what the 30,000 was 5 years ago, right? So 200% divided by 5 gives you 40% a year. Has the inflation rate been 40% a year? No. So I think it's fair that we can now begin to negotiate from 90, but I'm not sure that state governments, local governments, and others can afford that. But somehow, because their revenues have increased sharply because of the reduction in subsidy, because of the increase in tax mobilization, because of all other factors, it should be possible that the federal government will help subsidize the states and local government, and also help with these intervention programs to actually soothe the nerves and the pain of the small businesses and the ordinary man. That way, we bring some kind of equilibrium into the collective bargaining process.
For the CEO of the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise, Dr. Muda Yusuf, there is need to emphasize the importance of affordability in setting minimum wage recommendations. Dr. Muda Yusuf said this earlier today on our political program, Business Incorporated.
So the starting point is affordability. Can these employers, can they afford it? Because we are talking of national minimum wage. It's not just only about the federal. It's about the states, it's about local government, it's about the private sector. Many SMEs are struggling, even as business owners. They are declaring losses. Some business owners are borrowing to pay salaries as we speak. Some of them are recruiting only people who stay close to their places of work because of the challenges of transportation cost. So we are all in this together. Whether you are an employee, whether you are an employer, we are facing the heat together. So that is why we have to be reasonable, and we have to situate this within the context of affordability, the context of sustainability, and the context of equity.
What's the reasonable number for you?
Well, it is difficult to say, but maybe around 100,000 or something. Maybe that may sound reasonable.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association warns the over 400,000 naira minimum wage proposed by Labour could cripple businesses in the country. Please join us again. We have more stories for you as we head over to Abuja studios now, where Terry Ikume is standing by to give us more. Hello, Terry, and Happy New Week.
Well, Happy New Week to you as well, Anne. Now, a former governor of Ogun State and senator representing Ogun East, Benga Daniel, is appealing to Nigerians to exercise more patience with the Tinubu government amidst the challenging economic conditions which has triggered an industrial action by Labour. He made the appeal when he paid a courtesy visit to Channels Television corporate quarters in Lagos, where he also delved into the debate on whether or not to return Nigeria to regional government. He is promising to vote in support of the bill if it is presented before the Senate.
Whether we all like to believe it or not, the level of security has marginally improved since the advent of this administration. In terms of the purchasing power of the Naira, that has not done well. But of course, this is expectedly in exchange for what you can call an inflow of investments, which also should reflect and regenerate the economy. My own opinion is that that cannot be an easy fix, and Nigerians are looking for easy fixes. So I'm still going to appeal to our people that we can't make eggs, or we can't make omelets without breaking eggs. So the process we are right now is process of, breaking eggs, a little bit of deprivation, if you put it that way, and then the tomorrow will definitely be better. The creation of those 6 geopolitical zones is one of the brilliant things that the military have done. There's nothing really wrong in those states with the same kind of affinity coming together to fight a common cause. So to that extent, I have no issues whatsoever. And I think if it comes to the floor of the Senate, I'll be one of the supporters of the concept of regional governments.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kashim Shettima says the administration of President Bola Tinubu is committed to improving the quality of life of all Nigerians. The Vice President said this at the commissioning of the Outer Southern Expressway expansion project in the Federal Capital Territory, where he represented the President. Our correspondent Kumbi Aboluwade reports.
This Outer Southern Expressway is the fourth in the latest series of project commissioning by the Federal Capital Territory Administration.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen,
Vice President Kashim Shettima arrives the popular Powerhouse Junction in the Sokoru district of the Federal Capital Territory for the ceremony.
We may be seated.
Aside the host, the FCT Minister and the Minister of State for the FCT, dignitaries in attendance include the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and members of the Federal Executive Council, among other dignitaries. The OSAX, which is a subsidiary of the Southern Parkway and divided into multiple phases, was awarded in 2013 and covers a total distance of 67 kilometers. The first phase, which is being commissioned, links the presidential villa to Asokoro district. It also connects several link roads to satellite towns like Yanya, Kubwa, and several others. Hence, the project is expected to reduce traffic at the old Powerhouse Junction.
The cost of this project, as at when it was awarded, was 39.8 billion. But in 2021, it was revised to 59.9 billion. I can assure you that it's not only on road infrastructure. Go and see what is happening in education. We are trying to see that all our schools that are bad are rehabilitated, and that's what it's supposed to be. We're also going to health sector. Before December, Mr. President will invite you to go and commission not less than 75 kilometers of the area council roads.
The Vice President is representing President Bola Tinubu at this commissioning, which is holding on the first day of the industrial action by labor unions over the demand for a review of the national minimum wage. Though he did not speak on the labor issue, he pledges the administration's commitment to improving the quality of life of all Nigerians.
Today, as I officially unveil this great road, I reaffirm my administration's dedication to enhancing the quality of life for all Nigerians. What is unfolding in our capital is a testament to what can be achieved with our government's renewed hope agenda of positive transformation for the FCT and indeed Nigeria.
He then proceeds to commission the project. This first phase of the Outer Southern Expressway expansion project that's just been commissioned here today underscores the commitment to address road infrastructure in the FCT. From the nation's capital, Kumbi Aboluwade, Channels Television News.
In other stories, the military has handed over 8 rescued students of the Conference University of Science and Technology, or Kogi State, to Governor Usman Ododo. The students who were taken hostage by terrorists on May the 9th, 2024, were rescued on June the 2nd by troops of the Nigerian Army in a dense forest near Orago village in Kwara State, in synergy with operatives of the Nigeria Police Force and other security agencies. At the handover, which took place at the Army headquarters in Abuja, Governor Ododo reiterated the commitment of his administration to prioritize the security of all residents of Kogi State.
At this level, I have come to realize that the Nigerian Army has all it takes to stamp out kidnapping, banditry, and all sorts of criminal activities from our land, because the level of synergy, level of understanding, collaboration, and coordination carried out by them professionally is highly commendable, and I sincerely appreciate you and your men. I want to promise that Kogi State will always be there to partner with you. You are ever ready to answer your call at any point in time. And fighting crime and criminality in our land, we are up to date. We have all it takes in terms of equipment. We will continue to collaborate as Nigerians with your agencies to make sure our land is free of all these criminalities.
Let's wrap from the nation's capital back to Anne in Lagos.
Thank you, Terry. Ahead of the forthcoming governorship election in Ondo State, the Commissioner of Police in the state, Mr. Abayomi Oladipo, is promising adequate deployment of security personnel for the November 16th exercise. Well, he made this promise at a meeting of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security in Akure, the Ondo State capital. Meanwhile, the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, is calling for adequate mobilization of residents to register and collect the over 200,000 uncollected permanent voter cards across the state.
Of security personnel.
It's 5 months to the November governorship election in Ondo State, and the INEC chairman leads an entourage from the commission to a meeting with members of the Interagency Consultative Committee for Election Security. Top on the agenda is the presentation of the security situation in the state by the State Police Commissioner.
At the moment, we don't seem to have challenges as it relates to election, apart from the usual crimes that are being committed and are localized to the various senatorial districts. On the side of the police, we realize that we cannot do it alone, and that is why we have the support of every security agencies and members of ISEC in the state, that we move together as a team to tackle budding election crises.
On his part, the INEC chairman underscores the importance of collaboration among the various security agencies. He also appeals to stakeholders to mobilize residents for the ongoing continuous voter registration for the collection of the over 200,000 uncollected voters' cards across the state.
I want to assure registered voters in Ondo State that they should continue to troop out in their numbers to register and come out and collect their PVCs from the current registration. But we also have literally over 200,000 cards uncollected from the last exercise. So we encourage people to come and collect their PVCs so that they can cast their votes to whoever they wish to vote for on election day. Before I conclude, let me say what I've said consistently, that INEC is not we don't have a candidate in the Ondo governorship election. The choice of who becomes the next governor of Ondo State is entirely in the hands of voters in Ondo State, and will protect their choices and will protect the integrity of the process.
At At the end of the meeting, the INEC chairman inspects some voter registration centers in the state capital. There are currently over 20,000 new registered voters in Ondo State. This is in addition to the over 1.5 million voter cards collected in the state during the 2023 general elections.
Now let's find out more reactions trailing the industrial action by labor unions and how it is affecting businesses in the country. Well, Dominic Iwewu is standing by.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Anne. On business, more reactions are trailing the strike action embarked upon by organized labor today. One is from Mr. Adewale Smart Oyerinde, Director General, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association. He believes the over 400,000 naira labor is asking for will cripple businesses in Nigeria. He made the comments on Business Morning earlier today.
Now, what we are meant to recommend is a national minimum wage. It's very important to address that. The minimum wage below which no organization, either in the private or public sector, should pay. The wage ordinarily for the most vulnerable worker. It is not, the process is not to set a general wage increase. It is not. There has been conversations about living wage or there's no living wage. This particular committee that we have, it's set up to come up with recommendations for a new minimum wage. And for us, one of the key objectives is that you must protect jobs. Because if organized businesses continue to suffer the current situation, look, there's no way we can protect jobs. That is the basic reality of it. There's no way businesses can remain sustainable when the affordability becomes in question.
The federal government and labor unions are about to commence a meeting. Once we get updates on that, we will inform you. To some company news, listed energy giant Geregu Power PLC has signed a memorandum of understanding with German multinational technology conglomerate Siemens Energy to collaborate on capacity expansion at the Geregu 1 power plant. The agreement signed in Berlin involved plans for various solutions, including upgrading the Geregu 1 power plant from its current capacity of 435 megawatts to 500 megawatts. According to a statement from Geregu Power PLC, the partnership aims to advance sustainable, resilient and efficient power generation while ensuring longevity of assets. These efforts are aimed at supporting the growth and sustainability of Nigeria's electricity supply industry. The chairman of the board of directors of Geregu Power PLC, Mr. Femi Otedola, led the Nigerian company's team, while the managing director for the Middle East and Africa, Mr. Diemetias Dofa, led the Siemens Energy team. Geregu Power PLC has reaffirmed its commitment to the energy sector, announcing plans for mergers, acquisitions, and strategic partnership to bolster market presence and operational effectiveness. The company also emphasized its pivotal role in Nigeria's energy landscape, aiming to drive national development and enhance the well-being of Nigerians through reliable power supply. The domestic equities markets kicked off the first trading day of June in negative territory. Ini John Mekwa tells us more.
Welcome to the stock market report. Unfortunately, we're beginning the month of June, the very first trading day of the month in the red, but we shouldn't be worried. I mean, we had a lot of reds in May, but we closed in the green. But for today, the all share is down 0.13%, losing some 100s around here. We see that it closed at 99,173.87. But the good thing is the market cap is still doing good, looking at 56.10 trillion naira. But all of this is because of mostly the Fugaz. We know that that's the most liquid counter and controls the sentiments around the market. FBN holding dropped 4.69%. UBA also did the same thing. Unchanged, we had GTCO and Zenith Bank, but Access was moved to the red side. And so, of course, we expect that the banking counter dropped, but it was really good, really bad. It's 0.84% in the red. Consumer goods also are slightly down. That's because of Nigerian breweries. Has some news around that. You might want to take a look at that. Oil and gas is unchanged. This is like a status quo for this counter, but the summary of all of this is that the very first trading day in the month of June is in the red.
We'll be taking you live to Abuja to join the federal government and labor union meeting.
2024, further to the negotiation by the tripartite committee on national minimum wage and subsequent withdrawal of labor from negotiation, the leadership of the National Assembly intervened on 2nd June 2024. The organized labor declared nationwide strike on Monday, 3rd June 2024, to drive home its demands. The federal government, in the national interest, convened a meeting with labor held in the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation on Monday, 3rd June, with a view to ending the strike. After exhaustive deliberations and engagement by both parties, the following resolutions were reached. The President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, is committed to a national minimum wage that is higher than 60,000. Arising from the above, the tripartite committee is to meet every day for the next 1 week with a view to arriving at an agreeable national minimum wage. Labor, in deference to the high esteem of the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, is committed in paragraph 3 sub 2 above, and takes to convene a meeting of its organs immediately to consider this commitment. And for no worker will be victimized as a result of the industrial action. Down in Abuja on the 3rd of June, 2024. And this document is signed for the federal government by the Minister of Information and National Orientation and the Honorable Minister of State for Labor and Employment. For the organized labor, President, Nigeria Labour Congress, President, Trade Union Congress. Let me reassure Nigerians that we have had a very realistic and patriotic meeting, and the results will be very, very manifest soon. Thank you very much. So, national anthem.
It's over to you, Anne, for the rest of News at 10.
Thank you, Dominic. Israel's military says that it has confirmed the death of 4 more people abducted by Hamas on October the 7th, while it says the victims were killed during an Israeli operation in Khan Yunis and southern city of Gaza, and the bodies are still being held by the militants. Teniola Oyetayo has more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening from the Channel studio in London for your international news around the world in 5. Claudia Sheinbaum has been elected as Mexico's first woman president in an historic landslide win. According to Mexico's official electoral authority, preliminary results showed the 61-year-old former mayor of Mexico City winning between 58 and 60% of the vote in Sunday's election. That gives her a lead of almost 30 percentage points over her main rival, businesswoman Xochitl Galvez. The election campaign was marked by unprecedented levels of violence, often carried out by organized crime gangs. Sheinbaum, a former energy scientist who had the support of the outgoing president, has promised to reduce the violence and improve the lives of women in a country with one of the world's highest rates of femicide. After suffering a stunning blow in last week's election, South Africa's ruling African National Congress has begun closed-door negotiations with its political opponents about forming a coalition government. On Sunday, the Electoral Commission announced that elections in South Africa were free and fair, but with no single party gaining an outright majority. The final election results confirmed the ANC's decline in support to just more than 40% of the vote, far less than the absolute majority it had for the past 30 years after ending white minority rule. President Cyril Ramaphosa still described the result as a victory for democracy, calling on rival parties to find common ground.
We are all called upon to recognize that the results of the election in the end reflect the will of the people. What this election has made plain is that the people of South Africa expect their leaders to work together to meet their needs.
More than 50 people have died in India over the past 3 days as a brutal heat wave continues to grip parts of the country. Around 33 people died in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh over the weekend due to the heat. In Orissa state, about 20 people died, according to reports. Many of these deaths were reported on the 1st of June as India voted in the last phase of polling for its general election. The heat in northern and central India and parts of the West has been unrelenting for the past 2 weeks, with maximum temperatures hovering around 45 to 46 degrees Celsius for days and even climbing up to 50 degrees Celsius in some parts. The Israeli military has continued to launch more airstrikes across the Gaza Strip as officials discuss the latest proposed deal to end hostilities and exchange prisoners. In the south, Israeli air raids were reported overnight on Sunday in multiple is under an expanding ground invasion, as well as Khan Yunis. At least 12 people were killed in the overnight attacks on the two cities. The 3-part deal unveiled by the U.S. President Joe Biden last week would see a surge of humanitarian aid, as well as an exchange of some hostages for Palestinian prisoners before a permanent end to the war. However, the proposal has encountered vocal opposition from some members of Israel's government. And South Korea is set to suspend a 2018 military agreement with its neighbor after a North Korean campaign that saw balloons carrying trash sent over the border. The National Security Council of South Korea says it would present a plan to fully suspend the deal for approval to the cabinet at a meeting on Tuesday. North Korea said it sent the balloons filled with trash and manure in response to what it called a propaganda campaign by defectors based in the South and called the action an effective countermeasure. Suspending the agreement will pave the way for the South to conduct training near the military border. And finally, a U.S. couple have pulled a safe from a lake with an estimated $100,000 locked inside. James Kane and Barbie Agostini came across the safe in New York while magnet fishing, a hobby which involves searching for metals. Once they realized what they stumbled upon, they did some research and decided to call the New York Police Department to make sure there were no legality issues. A lot of the money is water damaged, but some can be salvaged, and with no way of finding the owner, the couple are able to keep their lucky find. And that's your international news around the world in 5.
Many thanks indeed, Teniola. Sports is now a total of 15 players trained early this morning in Uyo under the watchful eyes of coach Finidi George as the Super Eagles of Nigeria prepare for Friday's 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifying match against South Africa's Bayan Bafana. There was no training session earlier this evening that the players will get countenance intensive sessions on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, hopefully with a full house. Let's talk club football now. Real Madrid have announced the signing of Kylian Mbappe on a free transfer after the France captain left Paris Saint-Germain. The 25-year-old, who is PSG's record goal scorer with 256 goals in 308 appearances, has signed a 5-year contract at the Santiago Bernabeu worth £12.8 million a year after tax. Away from football, Novak Djokovic recovered from 2-1 down and defied a knee injury to beat Francisco Cerundolo and book a spot in the quarterfinals of the French Open. The world number one had to dig deep, as he so often does, and had to find a way to win and eventually prevailed 6-1, 5-7, 3-6, 7-5, 6-3 in 4 hours and 39 minutes. Well, we stay with the competition as Russian fifth seed Daniil Medvedev suffered a 4-set loss to Australia's Alex de Minaur in the French Open fourth round as his disappointing record at Roland Garros continued. Medvedev, a former US Open champion and 6-time Grand Slam finalist, started strongly but slipped to a 4-6, 6-2, 6-1 and 6-3 defeat. Medvedev's best performance in the French Open remains a quarter-final run in 2021, while he has also lost in the first round in 5 of his 8 appearances. We stay with the French Open. Aryna Sabalenka has reached the quarterfinals of the competition for the second straight year with a 6-2, 6-3 victory over Emma Navarro. Sabalenka, a semi-finalist in her career best Paris showing last year, needed just 69 minutes to dismiss rising American Navarro and make her 9th career Grand Slam quarterfinal. The 26-year-old Belarusian still has a chance to win the Australian Open and Roland Garros titles in the same year, thereby completing the first half of the calendar year Grand Slam. In cycling now, Denmark's Mads Pedersen has won the opening stage of the Tour de France warm-up race, the Criterium du Dauphiné, on a 4-day, 172-kilometer run. Pedersen also takes on the yellow jersey after his 9th win so far this season. In a week, he was named in Denmark's Olympic Games team. The 2019 world champion urged Sam Bennett and Hugo Page in a master sprint, one of 2 flat stages on the 8th-day race, seen as a fine-tuning opportunity ahead of the Tour de France later this month. And that's Sports Tonight. I'm Kelly Egiga. It's back to Anne.
Thank you, Kelly. And to the main points of today's extended news at 10. Federal government and organized labor have ended an emergency meeting to resolve their disagreement on the new national minimum wage, with some resolutions reached, including a reassurance to Nigerians that the realistic and patriotic outcome will be made known soon. Industrial action by the labor unions grounds activities at government offices, grounded activities today at government offices, airports, power installations and schools, among others, around the country. Renowned economist Bismarck Rewani and the CEO of the Center for Promoting a Private Enterprise, Muda Yusuf, weighed in on government and labor face-off as they recommended possible middle ground between both parties as national minimum wage. And energy giants Geregu Power PLC and German tech conglomerate Siemens Energy have signed a deal on capacity expansion at the Geregu 1 power plant. That's news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Good night.